Good morning. Thanks for being here. My name is Courtney Yaki. I'm the president and CEO of the Effingham Regional Growth Alliance. We've got Kim Kuchenbrod with us today as well. She is a TPM faculty fellow and TPM management consultant for the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Mike Baker should be on as well. I don't know if he's joined yet or not. I can't see folks anymore, but he is the manager for strategic planning and innovation for DCO. And we got Cindy and Dawn from CEFS with us today as well. And they are workforce development representatives through OWIA 23. And so we've got an update for you today. This here is a meeting just with the resource partners. Want to discuss what's going on and to answer questions for you guys again, and to keep engaged in this process, especially as we move through the strategies as we get closer to strategy 5, where we're looking to bring everybody together, the employment, the employer collaborative, and the resource partners together. But there's the presenters today. And then again, we've got Cindy and Dawn as well. For today's agenda, we've got this scheduled for an hour. We're going to try to run through some things just with a quick recap of talent pipeline management and that framework. I'm going to look at the preferred and required credentials and competencies of the 3 identified positions, those critical domain positions that the employers have narrowed their focus to. We're going to talk about where the collaborative currently is in strategy 4, and then forecast upcoming strategy for strategy 5 and participation there. And really in the strategy 4, need participation from the resource partners as well too. So hopefully to dive through a recap. I know some folks that are on here that caught the previous meeting. This might be a little repetitive. Some folks are more familiar with TPM than others, but just to keep everybody on the same page here. So what is talent pipeline management? Well, really it's a demand-driven, and I look at it as a demand and process-driven approach to workforce development that helps to bridge that gap between the private sector and education, and really use education broadly for resource partners as a whole. We're training providers, if you will. But what it does is help to empower the voice of the employer and to push forward in bridging that gap between the 2 sectors, and a huge focus on data, a huge focus on collaboration and what those outcomes will look like. And we'll dive into that a little more too. But overall, TPM was developed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. It is a 6 strategy framework. You can see to the side there, 1 through 6 of the framework, where originally started with that employer leadership and developing the collaborative as a whole, which we have noted the Effingham Regional Manufacturing Collaborative. And then running into strategy 2 is projecting that critical job demand and trying to quantify really what that demand is over a set period of time. Running into 3 is aligning and communicating job requirements and getting to that common language between employers, and really narrowing down to what is necessary for them from credentials and from a competency standpoint for the entry into the 3 for this here, the identified positions, the 3 positions. And then currently where we're at is analyzing the talent supply, and we'll dive into that more further in the presentation, but looking at that supply chain and what can we build out of, and what is currently made available, and how do we continue to expand off of that. Moving into 5 is really pulling everything together into the building out that supply chain and bringing both the resource partners and the collaborative employers together. And then 6 is just that continuous improvement and continuing to run through the strategies. And off to the side, you can kind of see a chart to where you've got to get organized first, and then where strategy 2 and 3 and 4 really kind of merging together, that we're just layering on value as we continue to move through this process and how they intertwine to each other, and then move into strategy 5 and bringing everything together. And strategy 4 and strategy 5 are probably the bigger uplifts, if you will, with requesting a lot of data and information, not only from the employers, but then working with the resource partners to try to identify what is available for the employers out there and make sure that they're using it to the extent possible. So you might ask, why are we doing this? Why does this matter? Well, at the end all, it helps to align what the actual training with what the actual demand is or what the job market needs. But this here isn't to remove or to replace anything that you're currently doing as a resource partner. I mean, most certainly we understand that folks, especially trainers in the education sector, have advisory boards or are engaged with the public, the private sector, and probably public sector and private sector partnerships as well. But engaged with your local employers to ensure that you're meeting those needs. And we understand that it's limited resources. It doesn't matter how big you are. It's always limited resources for time and money and the availability of people. And as you engage with employers, you engage in the various sectors to try to develop your curriculum, ensure that the training needs are being met. You're just getting a sample of that population. Here, what we're doing is trying to pull more of a concentrated effort from a specific industry and identified as manufacturing here. And TPM most certainly can be leveraged. That framework can be leveraged through multiple industries, but trying to narrow down information from a group of employers in this sector in the South Central, Southeastern Illinois, and then provide that information to our training providers and to our resource partners and merge that relationship together to build upon what you currently have. And hopefully you view this as a resource and take this data back to help make educated decisions to push forward. We believe it enhances the return of investment, not only for employers, but for the training providers, and helps to reduce those skill gaps and those mismatches. And ultimately what we're trying to do is streamline the transition from education to employment. So you've heard me note the Effingham Regional Manufacturing Collaborative, and so there's 11 employers that are currently participating through this, and you can see out on your screen here where we've got ConAgra, EMAC, we've got Flexingate, IHI Turbo, Jumbos, NAL, Pasco Systems Corp, or what some may be familiar with as Versatech previously, Seymour Milling, Stevens Industries, the Krusty's Company, and 3Z Printing. And so a good representation of both larger and medium-sized employers in the manufacturing industry in South Central, Southeastern Illinois. Of these 11 employers, we have approximately 6,500 employees that they represent. So we think we've got a good core of the population, and just want to note that the statistics that we run through and what we're going to discuss today, and then as we continue to move forward, is just these 11 employers. It's not encompassed for every manufacturer in the area, but we think that from a sampling standpoint and trying to look at the overall representation of the manufacturing population in our area, that it is good representation and will provide some significant data to be able to utilize in pressing your initiatives forward and building upon what your current services and offerings are. So for the critical demand position, and if you remember back to that 6 strategy framework, number 1 was getting everybody together, developing the collaborative. Number 2 was identifying what is the most demand, what is that critical demand, the positions that you need the most. And the employers narrowed down from did a huge survey and narrowed down to 3 positions of focus. And one is assemblers, another one machine operators, and then the third one with machine maintenance, where assemblers is more of your entry-level position. And not all employers have the title assemblers, if you heard me say earlier, getting to that common language, and I'll just call out Krusty's for a second. They don't have assemblers. What they have is production operators, and they've got low-tier production operators, and they've got higher-tiered production operators, which so they're entry-level of assemblers, and then their machine operators are semi-skilled. So just because we say assemblers doesn't necessarily mean that title is in each of the employers, but encompassing overall is what we've identified this as, and pushing forward and identifying what that position is. So assemblers is the entry level. Looking at the current number of positions, close to 1,550 employment opportunities here. And then the projected demand. So we asked them to look from May 15th, when we started the strategy 2 through the end of December 31st, 2026. So May 15th this year through the end of 2026. What is that demand? And looking at replacement and then also creation of new within these job positions. And so had a projected need of 410 additional ones through additional assemblers through the end of 2026. For machine operators, that's your semi-skilled position, and we'll dive into it a little more when we get into the competencies and credentials. But the machine operators currently have 600 employment opportunities out there, and look at a projected demand of an additional 237. There again, that's replacement over the next year and a half and almost just through the next year now at the time point that we're here in November, and then the creation of new as they continue to grow and what the expectations are leading into 2026. And then your machine maintenance is your more hired skilled positions, and currently have 516 employment opportunities out there with a projected demand of 55 for growth in that sector too, or that specific position. As we dive into, I'm going to start transitioning. So that was strategy 2, is identifying what are the jobs and what's that demand over a set period of time. Strategy 3 is identifying the preferred and required competencies and credentials. And I think it's just important to quickly note the definitions here and ensure that everybody's on the same page. And you guys probably know these a little better than I do, being training providers and from the education world, if you will. But I think it's just proper to ensure that everybody's on the same page. So when we say competencies, it's what someone should know or be able to do in a particular job as demonstrated through tasks performed, tools and technologies used, and knowledge, skills, and abilities applied. When we talk about credentials, we're talking about documents attesting to the qualifications and the attainment of competencies, usually in the form of an educational degree, education degrees and certificates, industry and professional certification badges and licenses. And then ultimately those hiring requirements, which is the combination of competencies and credentials and that work experience and more characteristics used in making hiring decisions for one or more jobs related to a business function. So diving in as we had moved through strategy 2 into strategy 3 and identifying what are the competencies and credentials for assemblers. There again, assemblers, this is your entry level position. This is entry level for almost all applicants. No prior experience is required, and identified for this position was that fluency in English is not required for the position as well. The preferred competencies and credentials that the employers have would be a high school diploma. They would prefer an individual coming into this position to have a high school diploma or a GED or at least 1 to 2 years of work experience. And we asked them, well, what does work experience really mean? Is it work experience in another manufacturing setting? They said not specifically in this industry as a manufacturer, but just work experience in the past and being able to show up to work on time, being able to report to somebody and think of those soft skills that you get from experience. And preference would be somebody that had at least been in the workforce for 1 to 2 years. And then to have a basic tech or computer ability, and had noted being able to operate a phone, button operations, and simple data entry. When we went into, okay, this is what's preferred, but what's required for being able to hire somebody in this position? So what's the required competencies and credentials for this position? Noted down to basic reading, writing, and math, and had selected or had noted to that at a junior high education, junior high educational level there. And that's one thing that we're hopeful to engage more with you as the resource partners in identifying what level in junior high is at this. So is it 6th grade? Is it 8th grade? Is it entering into high school, where their needs are from a basic reading, writing, and math? And just recognizing that you guys are professionals in the education sector, in the training sector, and have a better grasp at what those competencies are through basic reading, writing, math. We're going to look to you to help us guide us through that process and then narrow down exactly what that means. But to at the high level current, we're looking at junior high education. There are physical demands for assemblers and for this position, being able to lift, to stand for an extended period of time, and really working through repetitive motions. And a lot of the discussion for required competencies and credentials surrounded soft skills. And that's that reliability, the punctuality, teamwork, the ability to be able to follow written and verbal instructions, the ability to work well and communicate with others. I mean, teamwork and cooperation there again is very important. You need to have appropriate work attire, most certainly, and pay attention to details and things that you run into soft skills, and most certainly understandable of a lot of programs or service offerings from our resource partners can help to drive these soft skills into folks too. And some of that comes from experience and just being in the workforce too. And then the dependability and ability to stay on pace with the production group. And most certainly, as you can imagine, a cog at a wheel continues to move forward, and how people are dependent on other folks through various processes. And you look at different cells during a manufacturing process and what that value map looks like and pushing forward. And so very important to be able to stay on pace with the production group. And that involves those soft skills. That involves being able to meet those physical demands and having those basic reading, writing, and math ability there, and looking at that ability of, at the same level of a junior high education. Before I continue on, any questions towards assemblers? And I can't see anybody if you got a hand raised. I'm sharing my screen, so go ahead and speak up. And we'll continue on. For machine operators, this is the semi-skilled position. It's a production role requiring technical and mechanical proficiencies. And so we went from your entry level assemblers now to somebody that is a machine operator. A lot of times you find machine operators that can come externally into you with those skills already, or you're upskilling somebody from the assembler position into this machine operator position. Looking at the preferred competencies and credentials, and most certainly want to drive in. This is preferred, and then there's required. And the preferred competencies is that 3 to 5 years of manufacturing experience. Now, noted as assemblers, it was 1 to 2 years of work experience, not necessarily manufacturing or in that industry, but here preferred would be something of a 3 to 5 year manufacturing experience as well. And then certification and this is preferred, certification in industrial maintenance, industrial technology, electrical or mechanical technology, forklift certification, the ability to diagnose malfunctions, determine next steps, and escalate issues appropriately, and ensure equipment is maintained safely and efficiently. And this would be the most opportunistic, or the most person here to be able to enter into this position. There again, preferred competencies and credentials. When you get into the requirements, what is required for the position for somebody to be able to hire, to be able to come in as a machine operator or upskill somebody into this position? They've got to have the ability to read and interpret blueprints, schematics, work instructions, and layouts. Need proficiencies in using measuring tools. And we said, okay, what type of tools, what are we measuring here? And it was noted calipers, rulers, and gauges, and have that basic computer and human machine interface knowledge. And so think of a PC, a smartphone, and you would think everybody has a smartphone now, the mass majority of the population does, but doesn't mean you know how to operate it, or doesn't mean that you don't have more of a flip phone or something that is not a smartphone. And then those digital systems, and most certainly having that basic computer and human machine interface knowledge. And then a high school diploma is required for this. And that could be a GED, or they would look at 2 years of manufacturing experience. So preferred is 3 to 5 years of experience, but at the requirement for this position for machine operators, there again, a semi-skilled position, that's a production role requiring technical and mechanical proficiencies, need at least a high school diploma, a GED, or 2 years of manufacturing experience. Any questions towards machine operators? And I'll continue to press forward. And then we're getting in our machine maintenance. And the machine maintenance, this is the higher skilled level. This is a skilled position requiring demonstrated mechanical and electrical experiences here. Looking at preferred competencies and credentials is having electrical controls, robotics, and PLCs, welding, fabrication, and electronic repair, familiarization with computerized maintenance management systems, or the CMMSs, and the ability to obtain a forklift certification. And that's preferred. Forklift certification most certainly is not required, but they would love the ability to be able to get there. A little higher on the required competencies than what we've seen in other positions. And there again, this is a higher skilled position, but we'll look for a high school diploma or GED. We'll look at the basic computer proficiencies and problem solving ability. So think email, being able to navigate that computerized maintenance management systems, the CMMSs, Microsoft Office, the suite as a whole is something that is generally used. And we kind of see a little bit of a disconnect, very similar, where academia, or at least education sector, uses Google a lot, and we're seeing that the private industry is more towards Microsoft, where very relatable, but sometimes there's not a direct connection there too as well. Looking at mechanical aptitude and safe work practices, mechanical systems, pneumatics and hydraulics, training in that, and having a general overall understanding to it. Electrical troubleshooting, blueprint reading and interpretation. And then diving into that critical thinking and that problem solving and troubleshooting, which is, as you can imagine, a maintenance person would be well in tuned for. And then communicate with, and the ability to train operators. And that's being able to articulate what you need in a clear and concise fashion, that the person that you're working with has a understanding and expectation of what their role and what their responsibilities are and what they're to do. And they're looking for somebody that's had at least 2 to 5 years of maintenance experience or related post-secondary education or credentials. So what we ask, where's these related post-secondary education credentials? And they know to trade schools, vocational schools, or somebody that may have an associate's degree. Now, this is our more higher skilled position. There again, we had 3 critical jobs that we have identified narrow focus to, with assemblers as your entry level, your machine operators as your semi-skilled, and your machine maintenance as your higher skilled positions. Any questions before we continue on into where for machine maintenance? If you got a question, something comes up, throw it in the chat. Most certainly, and we'll catch it there as well. But moving on, this was our transition from strategy 3 into strategy 4 and where we currently are. And strategy 4 is a talent supply analysis. And you see the circles over there, back mapping. That's what the employers are currently engaged with, and we'll dive into that. But this talent supply analysis, it's a 4-step process, and really it helps the employers to answer the questions. Where have they traditionally found talent for new hires? Do they have the necessary supply of talent internally or from external providers to meet the projected demand? And helps answers the question, what is the current and potential capacity of internal, external pipelines? Looking at potential sources of talent, and that both internal, external, and what's the size and characteristic of that overall talent pool. So to start with the 4-step process, and these kind of interact with each other. They most certainly, as we move through the steps, add value to each to get down to that talent pool analysis as a whole. But we're currently working through the process in the various steps. So back mapping, this is on the employers. That's an in-depth analysis of current and potential talent supply, and it helps answer the question, where do you get your best talent? We're working with them currently and trying to identify the employees that they currently have. So they're really big with retention. So the current employees that they have hired within the last 5 years. That could be an individual that got hired last month. That could be an individual that got hired 3 years ago. That could be an individual that got hired 5 years ago, that are within one of the 3 identified critical demand positions. That's assemblers, machine operators, machine maintenance, and trying to identify where did they come from and what was their training associated. So what is that career pathway that that individual has taken to be able to get here? And both that's internal and external. We'll dive into that a little more as well too. But they are running through filling out surveys, doing an in-depth analysis of their current employees within these three positions, and they're again looking back to the current employees that they have at least hired within the last 5 years. When we get into that talent flow analysis, it answers the question, what are your existing talent sources, and analyze how effective the collaborative is in sourcing talent from job feeders. So that's internal, that would be the job to job flow analysis, and or the current providers and potential providers. That would be our external pipelines. And we'll dive into that supply analysis and supply demand analysis, better set there. And that's really combining the data that was produced in strategy 2, that demand planning that we identified earlier, and pulling everything together from the back mapping and that talent flow analysis, and really looking to see what this talent pool analysis as a whole looks like. And that's pulling everything together and looks at what can the data tell us about the talent that is available in the market compared to what the talent that we need. Continuing to push forward a little more about back mapping. There again, this is what the employers are doing. They're analyzing where their employers get their best, where they're getting their best talent, and there again, retained. Not necessarily just the highest performers, but those are most likely be retained that have been there for within the last 5 years. They're analyzing the employee job performance data against hiring and applicant data. So they're going back to their human resource information systems, their applicant tracking systems. They're sifting through resumes, trying to gather this information, put it into a survey, and allow us the opportunity to analyze that and to really dive in, do a deep dive into where they're getting their current talents, and try to identify the most productive internal and external sources. And there again, internal would be a job flow to job flow analysis, and external would be somebody coming in from a provider or another employer. And the next slide we'll detail that a little more, but just want to hit it to the point of their back mapping process. And really, it's to determine where a firm's existing workforce came from for the critical jobs. And it's reviewing all major talent sources. And I think the low-hanging fruit would be community colleges, high schools, training providers, and identifying where the current employees are and what jobs have provided the qualified candidates for these critical jobs. Looking at that internal job flow to job flow, and just looking at the related skills, what were the well-established career pathways to get an individual to the position that they're currently at, and are workers coming from other employers. And through this process, it may identify providers that are better fit or have a higher retention rates that they've leveraged, or may identify sources that they're not currently leveraging as well. So we're very excited to get the information back and get the data from that survey, and most certainly we'll be sharing that with you, but don't have it available today. Wanted to come back today to note what the an update from strategy 3 with the credentials and the competencies and what those required and preferred credentials competencies are. Just let you know where we're currently at in strategy 4 here. For the back mapping pipelines and tiers, noted earlier that there are 2 pipelines. There's your internal pipeline and your external pipelines, where that internal pipeline, that's that job to job flows, and it identifies the feeder jobs employees held prior to the critical job. And this most certainly can range from entry-level to mid-level jobs that are commonly held prior to being promoted. Most certainly focuses on that job-to-job flow that yields the greatest upskilling opportunities. What they're not doing is focusing on those one-off promotions or career investments, but really trying to identify the direct connections or pathways between jobs, resulting in either retaining for new roles or career advancement, and that's internal most certainly. And then we have the external pipelines, and that's this example here to the side of a talent supply chain, and really it's providers. and the providers' roles and the tiers. And this is you guys, largely, in fact. Comes down to the types of services that are provided within the collaborative value stream. A provider can play more than one role or more than one tier, most certainly. And as you see to your side, and I don't have a pointer here, but you've got that critical job, and that most certainly could come from a feeder job, from something internal that comes down to it. Could be a direct hire from somebody out of high school, or from a post-secondary, that'd be a community college, university. Somebody could go from a high school to military, or to like a community-based nonprofit, think CEFS, a staffing agency. Some employers are second chance employers. There could be somebody that was previously incarcerated. But just looking at the various tiers and what that career pathway that individual has gone through, and who they came from to be able to get to the current employer and into that critical demand job, and what training was associated with that. And that's what we're hoping to identify through this back mapping process. It can get a little confusing at times. I'll just note that, from tier 1 to tier 2. And don't overthink it. I mean, the biggest thing to look at is, like a community college could be a tier 1 or a tier 2. Somebody most certainly can go from community college or high school direct into the workforce, or they can go from a community college or a high school to a training boot camp, or to a staffing agency, or they may go into another employer, receive some training through that individual, and then ultimately into those feeder jobs, or into that critical demand job as a direct hire. So what the employers are running through currently is 2 different surveys. One looking at that internal talent pipelines for back mapping, identifying the job to job flows internally, and how an individual moved from one position to another, adding value through each position to get to their current critical demand job. And then surveying what's those external pipelines, and that's where was that individual came from, whether it's an employer, staffing agency, another employer, sorry, a staffing agency, high school, community college, university, the military, wherever they've come from, and what is that training that has helped them incrementally added value to get to the employer and to get to the optimal position that they're currently in. Any questions towards the example of the talent supply chain, the back mapping process, or where the employers currently are in the TPM framework?
Courtney, this is Kim. I'd like to interject
Yes, ma'am.
and state a little bit about the talent supply chain. When
Please.
we're looking at internal, what we're trying to do is to identify ways to upskill individuals from an assembler
Yep.
to a machine operator, or machine operator into a maintenance, or any other positions that the company is looking at. One of the biggest pain points that employers struggle with is retention rates. And sometimes the retention
Yep.
rate is low simply because that individual that was working with them, or was employed by them, lost interest in the company because they felt less valued, or they felt that
Yep.
they had reached their full potential, one way or the other. By helping the employers identify their internal pipelines, it helps them upskill those individuals
Yep.
and reduces the downtime for that position being open, because they feel like they had to go to an external source to find that. It's a great way to look at this too, is even from into a middle or entry level management to middle management. You could have someone at a company that had been there 10-year in maintenance tech and knows all the equipment inside and out, and all of a
Yep.
sudden your company realizes you're going to hire a supervisor and start a tiered process with that. Look internally versus thinking you have to go outside to find that whole new source. When we're looking externally, what we're doing is identifying and helping employers to identify in their job descriptions that we need to recognize all career pathway options, and not everyone is going to take the same pathway option. Do we
Yep.
really need that 4-year degree? Do we really need that associate's degree? And the response may be, well, that's the way we've always done it. Well, how's that worked out for you so far? You missed the talent pool because you set the bar at a certain level. If you set it
Yep.
too high, you miss a lot of talent because when that individual is looking for a job, they say, well, I've done all of this through my military training, but because I don't have an associate's degree or bachelor's degree, I don't qualify. So we're getting the employers to look outside the box at their talent. And some of it they find right in their own backyard with high school CTE programs that are in partnership or a certificate program that is in partnership with a community college. But because they said associate's degree or bachelor's degree, that high school student says, well, either I got to go get this or I
Yep.
can't work for this company. So again, with the whole back mapping is really getting the employers to take an honest review of their job descriptions and to say, are these credentials really required or
Yep.
are they preferred? And that's in part of strategy 3 with it. And I think it takes a little time for the employers to do this, but we're basically that old phrase, peeling back the onion and all the different layers to say, if we can do this and find ways to improve your process, we're going to increase your talent pool and we're going to increase your retention rates.
Perfect. 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 Thank you, Kim, for elaborating further. And I think that positions you well into strategy 5 here. You want to
All
continue
right.
on?
Sure, thanks. So when we get into strategy 5, this is where our all of you come in to play. And as Courtney said, we met with you back earlier this year just to kind of give you a preview of what the employers were doing, and we were going to bring you back into the sandbox to work in partnership with the employers, and we are very close to doing that. What we were able to identify from the data that we have at our fingertips with our conversations with our employers and so forth, we were already able to identify different career awareness activities up to retention activities that are available for the employers. Some of these employers may be aware of these programs, some of them may not. We don't assume that they know. So what we did is when we develop our value stream in strategy 5, we look at the supplier role, which is all of you, the training provider, which is all inclusive, K-12, 2-year, 4-year, nonprofit, trade schools, certificate programs. Anybody that provides training of any site falls into that resource supplier role. And then we have the employer role on the other end of the spectrum. So as you can see in the beginning, the supplier side plays a very significant role and slowly subsides as that individual progresses through their career track. And the employer role is very minimal in the beginning. What we're trying to do with the employers is to have them more actively engage at an earlier stage so that it brings awareness to the individuals that future potential employee or that student that yes, my company exists in your community. Yes, this is the products we produce. Yes, this is the careers that we offer, and this is the pathway to get there. Many times in the past, the employers have just waited for that student or that learner to graduate from high school or 2-year, 4-year and hope they find them, with it. But by engaging earlier and with guidance and some of the things that are required through ISB in regards to career awareness fairs and so forth, we can help employers engage in that early area. And there's a reason behind it. When you do a career awareness event for kindergarten students or that pre-K to 3rd grade, I get it quite often. I get employers look at me going, Kim, what am I going to do with a kindergarten student or a 3rd grader? We're not hiring them. They're not qualified yet. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. But what we can do is who brings those cute little angels to those events? The moms, the dads, the aunts, the uncle, the grandparents who are looking for opportunities. And it's a way to open the door and let them know what opportunities are there. With it. And then, of course, it meets the state requirements for the school district to provide these events. Basically, the students want to see something really cool and touch it, feel it, taste it, whatever it may be. In Danville, Illinois, we had Quaker at one time, and you know what? Those granola bars were everywhere at every event, and everybody wanted to them, and they knew where they were made. They knew what time of the month that they were made because you could tell from the smell. That was in the air. Yes, they're making granola bars today. But that was a simple little thing that made them very popular in the Vermilion County area. So what we've identified, and I just randomly picked two high schools. I mean, we've got a lot more to add to this, but looking at it, Effingham High School and Paris High School, we were able to go back and look at their school report cards. We were able to look at the courses that they offer to identify careers or courses that would be pertinent to those three positions as part of that career exploration, career prep activities. And then we started looking at what was available at, we just randomly picked two, Lakeland and Richland, and said, what classes do they take? And are they partnered with a high school program? Is there a certificate program attached to them? In some cases, there are. But now we need to let the employers know. Did you know that a high school student can earn this certificate program? And it would meet some of your requirements. Again, it's that open communication and an awareness. And we looked at the CEO Effingham County, and some may say, what does individuals who are interested in entrepreneurship, what would that have to do with manufacturing careers? And it has a lot to do with it because in that they understand what it takes to operate a company. They develop their leadership training skills. They get to understand everything, all the aspects from a leadership role. Every one of these are very important and helps build the foundation for that individual who may or may not work at that company. So we did include that in there. The Core Academy, the Effingham County Chamber Career Fair is a way for the employers to help promote their opportunities. The trade skills and manufacturing, last month was manufacturing month. I understand that is a large event down in that area, getting even community awareness. Getting the students to be aware of it, in the individuals who are coming to your area aware of what you have to offer. And then, of course, CEFS, Cindy and Dawn are here. They are your one-stop shop that can help with upskilling, incumbent worker training dollars, helping adults find that. But employers, do they know about CEFS? Do they know about the services that they can offer and help them with it? That is, again, part of the onboarding process that can be considered. It can be pre-employment training that the services that they offer. And then at the other end, everything from apprenticeships to job shadowing, co-op learning, internships, upskilling. These are things that were identified by the employers when they did strategy 2, that yes, we offer apprenticeships for high school students, or we offer internships to college students. Our survey is very detailed. For example, we want to know, are the internships high school level, college level, job shadowing? What level are you in? How many of those individuals have you hired? How successful was your apprenticeship training program? What is your apprenticeship program? What type of apprenticeship program do you have? Is it work-based? Is it hybrid? Is it competency-based? We want to know all of that. And then, of course, how can we start to identify those individuals to upskill them? Because we want to go into that retention, hoping that that individual wants to develop that career pathway and stay longer than 2 months, at that company. For this particular collaborative, manufacturing collaborative, they chose not only these 3 positions, but they are targeting how do we increase our retention rates. That was their number one goal. And in order to do that, then we went back and started filling in strategies 2 up through 5. So when we get into strategy 5, which is coming very quickly on us, I think Courtney's going to have a few asks of all of you. And like I said, we want to bring you to the table. This is just a small splattering of what we've identified already. And I know there's so much more out there. And, like I said, there's more community colleges, there's the universities, there's more high schools within our region that we're looking at. But I just wanted to put a few points out here so you can see how in-depth this can become. Take it away, Courtney.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Kim. And it puts us right into the ask here. And it's that ask of our resource partners. And kind of recap a little bit too about the 3 critical positions. And there again, what we surveyed was what is the demand from these 11 employers through 2026 or through end of year next year. And looking at assemblers, they're looking at a 26% increase in needing 410 employment opportunities. For machine operators, that's a 40% increase over the next year compared to what the current employment opportunities are, and that's an additional 240 employment opportunities. And the machine maintenance is 11% increase, and that's 55 employment opportunities. And there again, skill levels at all 3, where low skill or just entry level, if you will, semi-skilled with machine operators, the entry level assemblers, and then a higher skilled position with machine maintenance. And for the resource partners, and what we're asking and moving through, and what you had seen Kim identified for there again, just a small section of what that total value stream looks like from a talent supply chain, is we need assistance in identifying the courses and or the programs or what offerings that you have to these employers to assist in getting people prepared for assemblers, for machine operators and machine maintenance positions, and trying to narrow down not just what are those offerings, but what's the enrollment numbers, what's the number of completers that you're seeing, and compared to the total capacity that you have for these programs, for these classes, for these training and these opportunities. And even to identify, and I wrote a note to add another bullet point under here. What is the outcome? What is the result of these programs, these courses? Is there a certificate? What is the value that's added to that current employee, whether that's in upskilling for incumbent worker training, or to a potential individual that's looking to enter the workforce, or maybe change career pathways and to enter something into manufacturing. And most certainly need that assistance from you guys. You'd seen that ask go out when we'd sent out the invitation for today's updates, and going to be hounding you a little bit too as well. Allow us the opportunity to get that info and start inventorying what that talent supply chain looks like. And we want to be doing this, and have currently started, but want to be doing this while the employers are working through their back mapping process as well. So we continue to push these efforts forward. And as part of strategy 4 there, as you'd seen, a 4-step process is merging everything together too, and then diving into strategy 5. And that's where a lot of participation's coming in from you guys as well. In that strategy 5 is holding joint sessions with the collaborative and the resource partners together through this process collectively. And I know I've got a hold out there on December 4th for you guys. This by all means is the pace is set by the employers. They've got their day-to-day moving through everything. They're coming up on end of year stuff as well. And I'm sure within your guys' respectful organizations, you most certainly understand they're moving through those processes as well too. And gonna have to push that back. The next date that we've got set is December 18th. And so I'll cancel that December 4th hold and set December 18th of a hold sent out to the resource partners. And that's the anticipation of moving into strategy 5 and bringing both groups together and really see the magic work and start to build upon what existing relationships you currently have, or build new relationships that you may not have. So we've got about 5 minutes left. Want to open it for any questions, any discussion, what's burning your guys' mind. I know we've thrown a lot at you today. Hopefully it was informational for you and a value add, but any questions from the group?
Courtney, this is Kim again. I wanted
Yes, ma'am.
just throw out one thing. Can you go back to your previous slide?
Sure, this one here.
With your percentage, yes. So I want to point out something that's very important. That 26% increase, 40% increase, and 11% increase is only for 11 companies.
Yes.
Those are the ones that are at the table. Those numbers can be maybe a lot larger by all the manufacturers in the region, but we don't know that. Again, this is of the willing and of the employers who wanted to engage and go through this process.
Yep.
So these numbers can be a lot larger for the region, but this is what those 11 employers shared with us.
Thank you for reinforcing that, Kim, most certainly. And just a sample of the population, but we're hopeful is that this is a concentrated sample in this specific industry and provide you guys with some additional data and information to be able to push forward too. So, but do recognize and thank you for reinforcing again, Kim, just the 11 employers that were identified earlier that make up the Effingham Regional Manufacturing Collaborative. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Got a couple minutes left. Any questions? Anybody from the group? Everybody has a comprehensive understanding. They're all ready to go. Everybody's going as soon as you get off the webinar here. The Zoom meeting is going to send us what programs and services that you offer to help to adhere to the three employers or the three positions that our employers identified. I hope so. I hope so. I hope so. If there are no questions, we'll just continue on and to
Courtney, we have a question.
Oh, I see it there.
Can we share the presentation?
Yes. So we'll send out the presentation. There was a recording. I tried to hit the recording. Somebody else with AI had generated it, and we will try to grab that from them. We'll see what happens on the backside, but if all possible, we will send out the recording as well, in addition to the copy of the slides. So you've got the information that was presented here today as well too. Thank you, Ike. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Any additional questions? I like it. I hope everybody found this informative. Thank you for taking some time out of your day for the update. We look forward to continue to move through this process. I had one more slide. It's just my contact info. I think you've seen it before. If not, it will be provided to you in the copy of the slides. But much appreciate everybody. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good day.
Hey, Courtney.
Yes, Mike.
Mike's here.
Before people jump, I'd just like to kind of gauge the pulse of the room. So we threw a bunch of stuff at you rapid fire. Does anyone see any concerns with pulling your data together or understand the significance and why it's important to do that? Like, anybody here have any concerns about being able to do it or plans not to do it?
Mike, from a Lakeland College standpoint, yes, we can provide. I've given Courtney some information from our division chair for technology, but we're happy to provide. We're also happy with our Center for Business and Industry to offer short-term training, whatever that looks like, because we want to be able to help the employers meet their needs. And especially as we see the numbers, I think it's very impactful from an educational standpoint to be able to see what do the employers think is coming. And like Kim said, this is 11 employers. That's huge.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, well, as you go into your data collection, questions may come up. So if they do, don't get stuck. Reach out for assistance, and we'll be happy to give you whatever guidance we can. But the important thing is if you can have your data ready by the time we pull everybody together, then we can have an informed discussion with the companies about, okay, how do we get a pipeline set up that better meets their needs and helps your students land good jobs. So that's it. Thank you.
Perfect. Perfect. Great way to sum everything up, Mike. And thanks for jumping in there. With that, we'll end today's session. Appreciate everybody. Hope everybody has a good rest of your day.
Thank you.